Welcome to the Chad&Chong podcast. I am Chad.
And I am not Chong.
You certainly are, but you are a wonderful human being, and it's our special guest today. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Eric Kern. Eric is a drummer, playback engineer, and music director with experience spanning major tours and live production. He's currently on the road as playback engineer for Big Time Rush's IRL World Tour and has worked with Dea, La Santa Cecilia, AJ Raphael, and Skizzy Mars, and many, many more. Eric also previously served as the musical director at Saddleback Church here in Orange County for over 10 years, directing music for Saddleback Worship. And most importantly, he wants me to say that offstage, he is a wonderful husband and dad.
It's true. It's all true.
You really are. And if you guys didn't know, me and Eric go all the way back. We used to be roommates, and we actually both got on the AJ Raphael band at the same time.
Same time,
and
same gig.
Same time, same gig. And we have traveled the world, shared many a room, a seat next to each other on the plane, a shoulder to sleep on. This is my brother right here. So thank you, Eric, so much for coming out and making time.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Eric, I know you as so many things and so many things that you do so well and with excellence. But for those who don't know you, maybe you can just give them a little treat back to how did it all start for you?
Oh, man. Well, grew up in like a semi-musical family, went to church, and grew up in a really small, charismatic church in Grants Pass, Oregon. Small town, probably like 20,000 people, right? Not huge. And if you are familiar with like Dutch Bros Coffee, that's where it started. Shout out to Dutch Bros. Yeah, so just grew up playing in church. I think I played my first church service when I was 7. And it's not because I'm good. It just means that the worship pastor had a lot of grace for me. And yeah, that just fast forward, I kept playing drums at church, did the drumline thing in high school. That was really exciting. Played bass drum, then snare drum and quads, and got taught by some excellent teachers along the way who had a lot of drum corps experience, which fast forward, I moved to Southern California, and I'm in the middle of trying to decide, am I going to go to college? Am I going to, what's my next step? I ended up auditioning, marching some drum corps, which I ended up marching with a group called the Blue Devils out of Concord, California, played snare drum for them in 2008, which was a lot of fun. And so through that experience of drum corps, you get really in the nitty gritty. You kind of become a perfectionist, which is a blessing and a curse. But it really did shape my work ethic. It shaped my attention to detail and really collaborating with a team. And so yeah, that grew me a lot. And then all along, I'd always been playing at church. And when I wanted to play at my local church, at the time, I think I was living in Temecula. I just wanted to serve at church, but they gave an honorarium to their musicians. And I started to learn, I can actually do drumming for a living. Not that I was wanting to use church for that, but it was nice. You're a college student. You want to, you want to be able to buy whatever you need at the time, rent eventually. and
basic necessities of life.
I don't condone, gigging church. Sure. I don't think that's awesome, but, God opened up a lot of doors through church, and that was actually a great opportunity to learn from a lot of great leadership that I had along the way. Awesome music directors that encouraged me to learn things like Ableton and really get into the playback sphere where you're drumming and running playback. And then I would take that and introduce that to the random different bands that we were in or whatever, So when we got started with AJ, there were no tracks, but then by the end of it, I think when we were doing live shows, we were implementing a lot more things that really enhanced the full picture of what he wanted to represent as an artist and still stay true to him, which was really cool. And then when we had guests, I don't know, Tori or whoever, we were able to support her and stay true to her sound when we would do things live with her. So really, I guess that's where Chad steps into the picture in my life. We became roommates and then both kind of went our separate ways for a season. I moved to LA. You went to Chicago. In my time in LA, I just really pursued music direction and drumming, did a lot of session work, did a lot of MDing at church. A door opened at Saddleback Church, where I joined a really awesome team there at the time. And probably did that for 5 years before the time came for me to be like a lead MD for the church. And then right then is when COVID hit. And that kind of turned everything upside down. Learned a lot through that season, became a better producer, better engineer, learned how to turn things around really fast in that season because we had to do church every weekend still, but online now instead of live, which is just a completely different skill set and toolbox to open. And all through that, sharpening skills as a leader, as I don't know, even relationally. I met my wife during that season. So
Amen.
Shout out to Lauren. And
shout out.
And we got married at the end of the pandemic. So that was a big life thing. And then
I was there.
you held our whole reception together. So thank you. And then kids and more opportunities keep opening. And, I recently, within the last year, stepped away from my music director position at Saddleback to pursue some other opportunities some doors that were open, which I'm super grateful for. So, and along the way, doing playback stuff, that's kind of what I'm doing on tours right now in this season. So that's, I guess, that feels long, but man, that's what got me here. So
yeah, that's pretty awesome. So when I got introduced into your life, which is, as you mentioned before, you moved to LA, I moved to Chicago to pursue some other stuff. But before then, we had this house that was pretty much all to ourselves. And, I was really into producing, but also I was actually touring. I was gone almost every weekend with a couple different artists. But when Eric came in, he came in and brought about, I don't know, was it 7 or 8 drum kits into the house?
I think I had about that. Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun. I mean, everything from DW to Ludwig's to some clear, acrylic drums to everything.
Sonar Champions.
Sonar, I forgot about that. Yeah. And, me being the producer, him being a drummer, we had a blast. I mean, we were recording everything, in the kitchen, in the living room, in a tiny room, and fast forward, even when I moved to Chicago, I would come down to LA and, be working with some artists, and I would ask Eric to come and play drums. And we would literally be doing like 12 songs in a day type of sessions where we were just knocking them out. And, I say this because, Eric, I think to this day, you are one of the not just quick and efficient, but very tasteful drummers that I've worked with in the studio, because you always view everything from that 20,000 foot view. And because of his, experience with the Blue Devils and all these kinds of things, folks, I wasn't quantizing stuff. If you look at my Pro Tools session, Eric was on the grid and it had feel, and it was so easy to punch in if we needed to. And again, like when you're in the studio, time is money, and you want somebody who can just lay it down and get tones, which Eric is a huge nerd of. And to be honest, Eric is the one who actually turned me into Ludwig drums, which is, again, if you don't know in the studio, they are the ultimate. Eric, you want to talk about a little bit about how you got into sound design? And, obviously it started with the drums, but it's kind of a huge deal when you're dealing with MDing, producing shows, now even into playback and making sure that all the tracks fit within a live show, and how's it going to translate to arena. But I know that you have that ear. So can you just show our audience a little bit, how did you get into that?
Of course, man. I think it is always inspired by other people that you're playing with and the music they're listening to and being inspired by that. So maybe when, before I started to develop an ear for that, I was really into really clean tones. And I thought maybe there was just one right way to tune. And I had an instructor who went to Berkeley and University of North Texas. And he was very adamant about, this is the way you tune drums. This is how you get them to sound this way. And so I really stuck to that for probably too long. And then I start listening to records more critically and hearing, someone like, like a great modern reference of probably what I'm trying to get across is like an Aaron Sterling. Like, yeah, there's a way to do it that you can learn in school, but then there's like a very almost irreverent way to tune that gets the job done and gets the tone, like a really unique character that is suited for whatever artist you're supporting. Because maybe you're playing for a more indie singer-songwriter record, and it doesn't need those, like, I don't know, those gospel tones that are clean and tight and punchy. Maybe it needs something warmer, and maybe the snare doesn't sound perfect. It's got maybe a little more character, and you're really depending on mics and room mics to capture a really sweet sound. So I think listening to records more critically, realizing there isn't one right way, but there's a lot of ways to ultimately just try and capture a vibe, capture a feel of whatever the sound is you're trying to ultimately support. You're supporting an artist. You're usually not the star of the show. It's very rare unless you're a clinician. So that's kind of maybe where it jump-started me. Listening to guys like a great drummer like Darren King, from those old Mute Math records. Man, killer tones. Or if you listen, I already mentioned Aaron Sterling. That guy is recording on everyone's stuff right now, And when you look at his studio, he has two different setups, one for a tight sound, one for a big roomy sound. A lot of different mic selections, a lot of different drum selections. And each one of those completely turns the tone and the feel of, even if you played the same groove the same way, it would feel completely different because he changed a snare drum or a kick drum, So in the drum world, I think I started with this really strict method of this is how you tune. The top head is perfectly in tune with itself. There's no tape, there's no dampener. And on the bottom head, it is a minor third higher. Yeah, right. And you tune to the resonant frequency of the drum to get the most tone.
Right.
And then I go in the studio and every engineer's like, Eric, that tom's ringing too long. Can you dampen that? You start to learn, you start to figure some things out like, oh yeah, maybe that's how you get the most resonance out of a drum, which is a great thing to learn how to do. It's great to know how to get all of your lugs in tune so that the drum sings. But then you got to serve the song, and then you got to start doing things like throwing tea towels and rattly things on your cymbals and do all the things to get unique, cool tones. So for drums, that's where that started. And then beyond that, it's learning from bands that really are good at crafting like a great band sound. I used to think even with something like bass tone, that it always just had to be this pure, smooth, subby thing. And then, as everybody's starting to listen to music through, I don't know, their phones, there's no low end. Right. So if you have just this really smooth, almost sine wave, or just pure square wave synth bass or something, and you don't hear it on your phone, well, it's because there's no harmonics. So you need distortion, you need saturation to make things glue together, for them to cut in the mids. A cool thing that I learned, even just with gluing that electric guitar sound, like so for me in the context that I was dealing with was a lot of CCM worship music. And there's this big frequency gap between the low end and your rhythm electric guitars. And the keys don't always fill that void, and they can, but like then you start to step on the toes, especially when you start getting into inversions, and you want to create that lane, but at the same time, you need those sounds to glue together so you get that wall of sound so it feels huge. And I'm like, oh, saturation was the key. Okay, cool. We need that micro synth pedal, or we need, some sort of distortion pedal to help grit up that bass so that we can hear it. And then it fills that gap. And you would never, maybe by itself, it might sound a little too aggressive or whatever, but in the context of the song, when you gain stage up to it, all of a sudden now it feels massive. And I'm not thinking that that's coming from the bass. I thought that was like just really fat electric guitars.
Right, sure.
But it's not, and it's how you harmonize this full bigger picture of the ensemble of like your band, so tones really matter. I learned to appreciate dark and warm textures that can sit in a mix. and then learn to be pokey when you need to be. So it needs to cut through. So yeah, long explanation. I'm sorry. That's
that was great.
But yeah, I've learned a lot from friends who are a lot better at sound design than I am.
Yeah.
And I'm always trying to find their tips and tricks to create layers that sound good in context.
Man, I love what you first said, before you even explained saturation and all these kinds of things. You said you listened in detail to a lot of records. You started listening to people around you and started listening to feedback. You started listening. And, I know that nowadays there's so much information out there, especially in social media. Try this plugin, try this pedal, try this guitar, try this. And I think what's missing, especially as a sound engineer, is people are missing the learning aspect and actually using your ears, because at the end of the day, all these things around us are tools. But if we don't know what we're after or what the final outcome is, or that we're predicting it's going to be, you can keep tweaking knobs forever and you'll never get there. We've worked in the studio a lot, and I know at times like a snare sound or a synth patch or something is something that we would take our time on, because you're right. When it just sits in the mix, there's almost nothing else that you need to do. But there was so much time in crafting that, but then also you had to learn frequencies, what's going to fit where, what kind of drums are appropriate, because it's not, 22, 12, 14 every time that's going to fit. Or our favorite things in church, your 10 by, 55-inch snare to get that big low end. You know what I mean? And actually another shout out to Eric, because he was the one who actually put me on to the Ludwig Superphonic snare, which is my number one snare here in the studio. It's sitting right there, but I'm able to tune it up. I'm able to tune it down. Again, like what Eric said, depending on the song, it totally changes the landscape of the song. And I think another important thing that maybe church really helps kind of refine is, because it's weekly and you have the freedom and a little bit of grace to actually try things out. You kind of really hone in on your skills as a listener, but also as producer. And I know, Eric, like being at the helm of Saddleback Church, which is one of the largest churches in America, during COVID, you had the experience to work with huge Christian artists like Israel Houghton, Paul Bloch, Darlene Check. Maybe you could tell a little bit our audience about what exactly you did in that time, because you weren't just drumming. COVID changed everything.
Yeah, COVID changed the rules, man. We went from, trying to cover 20 different campuses with their live services.
Worldwide.
Yeah, ranging in size, from a large room to, the most intimate of settings, which is its own battle, to just, oh no, we're purely video, and this needs to feel like it's on iPhone. This needs to feel like, because that's what we all had. We not all of us had like pro gear, so we were like making do with what we had, and then trying to shift that and make it sound as good as we could, through remote sessions and through home studios setups that we had. So first off, huge fan of everybody that you just mentioned, and
I am too.
Wide-eyed to even have the opportunity to work with any of them. But yeah, I mean, we did probably the gnarliest one for me, and it was so exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time, was working with Israel. So me and our worship pastor at the time, we sat in remote sessions and arranged, basically because we were both like fans of his growing up, like, well, let's just take all of our favorite moments of his and make a 10-minute medley.
Wow.
And just try to make this big seamless, worship set. And that's exactly what we got to do. And we submitted it to him and his MD, and thankfully got really positive reception. And man, Israel, that guy is a beast. This is a 10-minute medley.
Yeah.
Dude one-taked it.
Wow.
But then, he's playing acoustic and singing. So, I mean, on the back end, you can imagine the bleed of that acoustic off of a one take with no substitution. And he's the principal, he's the main guy.
Wow.
How do you clean that up? So on the back end, the mix was like pretty critical on that one. But also just the arrangements and making sure that, we were staying true to his stuff and just doing our best with, I don't know, just being true to his sound. And, we all hold Israel in such high regard in terms of, shaping that kind of CCM gospel hybrid sound. And yeah, so but the nerve-wracking part was drumming on it. The person responsible for the video wanted us to do 2 takes of it, one behind a black backdrop and one behind a white backdrop. And this is a 10-minute medley.
Oh boy.
And I haven't drummed in 7 months at this point because COVID.
Yeah, sure.
And so being asked to do those types of arrangements was stressful, but we did it and it turned out great. And really proud of that one. It was really cool. So, but Israel.
Yeah, and Israel just won a Grammy.
Coditos.
And Kevin and I both grew up in Israel since like middle school days from Friend of God. Again, I say rejoice.
Yeah.
As did Eric and all that. And so to be able to, work with somebody who you grew up listening to in church.
Yeah.
What is that like? Because not everybody gets to experience that.
It's awesome. We were really fortunate at Saddleback to have a lot of guests come through. A lot of artists would want to do their album release there because the congregation was really kind to them. And it's a great platform. At the time, we had Natalie Grant come out. We had a number of artists come through that would debut. And so a lot of the time it was a hybrid team with some of their team and some of our team. So directing through those circumstances was really fun. It felt like it prepared me a little bit for what it's like to work with artists even on that outside the walls of church.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really grateful for those opportunities.
Yeah, it's amazing. Saddleback Church, again, is a huge church here that's very influential in America. And actually, a lot of people look up to Saddleback, and Saddleback actually has a lot of programs that, other churches can go and take to their own local churches and kind of model that. Eric, for those who don't know, because a lot of people probably just look at musicians or church musicians as you show up on Sunday, pick some songs, and you go. This is a full-time thing, especially when you are overseeing over 20 campuses worldwide. You want cohesion within these campuses, right? Can you just maybe run through what your week looks like in Saddleback as an MD? What are some of your duties? What does it look like for those who may be aspiring to be a maybe full-time church musician? Give us a little insight of what your week looks like.
It's a team effort, and we were blessed to have an amazing team. We would gather. We had what we call a T-minus system. So that means 4 weeks out, we would call that T-4, T-3, 3 weeks out, and so on and so forth. And each of those weeks had a goal set to accomplish leading up to a particular weekend. And so every weekend we're handling 4 different steps or so, depending on what the week is that's coming up. Maybe that's a special request that the pastor would want. Maybe that's introducing a new song, or maybe it's intentionality in making sure that we're keeping a song that has really stuck with the congregation and making sure that it's on repeat, so that they can really grasp the lyrics and make sure that they know it. I like to call those certified bangers, the Waymakers and whatnot. Those just really resonate. So we want to make sure that those are constantly in rotation. So we would have these meetings to really refine kind of the schedule of what we anticipate would happen. And our best that we could give was maybe 80% accuracy. But we figured if we walk into that week with at least 80% of what we know is going to stick, we're setting ourselves up for a win for when a curveball comes. The best that you can do is be prepared in any situation. And so there was always a sense of flexibility. Pastor Rick Warren always had fast, fluid, flexible as a motto everywhere. And that was something that really was something you had to hold loose to everything. And when changes came, you got to be fast with it. So, I mean, as a music director, or even as a member on the team, it's like learning a new arrangement really fast, editing Ableton really fast, and being able to execute it with excellence. And so in our week in preparation to that, we would do everything we could to make sure all of our team, which were 95% volunteers, we would set them up so that they were going into the weekend feeling as ready as they could for whatever we were going to throw at them. So we used Planning Center, and I tried to resource them the best that I could. So we would do, solo mixes, like up mixes for the instrumentalists, which means, it's a mix of like the tracks with their exact part up like 10, 15 dB, so that they can pick out their part, but also still hear how it sits with all the other instruments, with click, track, and guide. And then all of them would learn. Also, in addition to that, we had charts with the arrangements that we're doing, and then full band references for them to rehearse to with click and guide. The idea would be that we would give that to them far enough in advance that they could show up, not needing a band practice, but it's a proper rehearsal where everybody's already done their homework. They've already dialed in most of what they could. And then it's refining and locking in as a band for a Saturday afternoon. And then we're rolling through. So on the music director side, it's the planning, it's the prep. So you have the Ableton session, you have all your rehearsal mixes and references for all the teams. A lot of the time that is including your instrumentalists and your vocalists. On a scale like the broadcast campus in Lake Forest for Saddleback, it was time-coded references for video and lighting. It was making sure that video is synced and that everything is lining up. We do a pre-roll, so it's video that starts the service that the band starts to add on to, then goes seamlessly into the first song. So all those transitions, working all of that out. Are there any technicals? So keyboard patches and sounds, like if I have someone who works a 9 to 5 walking in, I want them to sound like the record when they walk in. So now I'm prepping, our keyboard sounds to sound like the record. And so when they walk in, I need to show them, okay, this is what we got this week. Here's how you're going to cycle through. Here's all your program changes, or here's how you're going to manually change that. This piano has a dotted eighth delay, or, this one has a big verb. This is how you need to approach this. You can't always play it like maybe that volunteer would maybe naturally be inclined to play. There's maybe a bit of producing then that happens on the live or like direction that's maybe a little premeditative as a music director, and then executing during that Saturday rehearsal. Same thing with guitar tones and bass tones. Like I said, you're really trying to craft this ensemble sound and create this identity of a sound. So all of that is on you to prep those tones, get the gear working and ready. And so when they show up, they sit down and they feel and sound like $1 million. You've already had a lot of communication with each individual throughout the week so that they feel like they have everything they need. And then they show up, and then you're just focused on the reason you're there, which is leading a congregation in a time of worship. You're focusing on God in that moment, and you're not focused on, okay, well, what am I playing? Or how should I play that? How should I approach that? So that's kind of what.
That's a lot, man.
In a programmed church, like,
sure.
And now you're seeing a lot more spontaneous moments of people having kind of a basic idea, but then they're going off cuff. So then it's, how do you take those tools and make them flexible so that we're not glued to an arrangement? Ableton isn't just stagnant. How do we go in and out of moments? So really utilizing tools then to get creative so that it's suiting what ultimately your leadership wants.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot. To me, it sounds like a lot of intentionality, but also a lot of fluidity, a lot of communication. And again, being the MD, you're in charge of making sure that everybody succeeds. That means all the planning, all the resources. That means knowing everyone's parts, like you said, knowing everyone's patches, whether it's on the keyboard, it's on the helix, it's on, in the tracks, knowing what to put in, what to not, all these kinds of things that you did for over 10 years every weekend, which, by the way, was also Saturdays and Sundays, sometimes 16 services on Christmas and other special occasions, and then getting all this information out to also all the other campuses' leaders, making sure they understand their patches and this and that. All of this prepares you to basically your transition here recently to now you're working with Big Time Rush as their playback engineer. Speaking to a little bit about that transition and just how 10 years of that crafting and honing in your craft has led you to be prepared for an opportunity like this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the fast-paced nature, the attention to detail, and the when you get used to that pace and that holding loosely to things, but being able to edit really quickly or whatever, that all translates incredibly well into a real world outside of church situation.
How so?
People think that, oh man, because as a playback engineer, you are running a lot of things by just a few clicks on a laptop, right? It's going to be controlling pyro, cryo, lighting, video, backing tracks, and patches for everything that's happening on that stage. People are like, oh, that must be really stressful. You're in an arena full of, thousands of people. Are you nervous? Thankfully, I'm not. And it's because I'm confident in the skills that we've been able to acquire through things at church. Now, I've had enough mess ups along the way to learn from. Thankfully, my mess ups aren't being learned in a environment like that. But yeah, it's a lot of preparation, gives you confidence to sit down and know that things are going to work because of the preparation that you put in on the front end of things. So when I sit down to run the show for Big Time Rush and I'm calling things for them, I'm not nervous. There's a little bit of like pre-show buzz, but it's not like it's not for lack of confidence that things are going to run smoothly, And then when things do happen, because in live music, things happen. A cable can go bad. A patch can all of a sudden stop working, or, a line all of a sudden has like a riz or a hum on it, and you have to troubleshoot those things. But I think the preparation side of things, how that translates is, well, now instead of, maybe just prepping the band and the team, which is what the music director's role on this job is going to be. My focus needs to be on this gear and making sure that it's running. So I'm not just a guy pressing spacebar. Right. I got to make sure I understand the ecosystem of the gear that I'm using. So on this run, it's my connectivity stuff. So they're running with like a 1U in aggregate mode, meaning it's combining another interface using the old Play Audio 12, just so that we could have gotten more channels. They just released the 2U, which probably would have solved a lot of that, but I don't have that yet. And then also the UAD stuff for running vocal processing. We have 4 principals, so that's 4 different lines of processing on that.
So you're in charge of that too?
Yeah. So mainly just tune. And those guys are great singers. So I mean, it's literally just polish, but it's having confidence in each of those areas, in the software side as well as the hardware side and the troubleshooting side, so that if something isn't working, you're confident in how to fix it. So that's where the prep, the preparation meets the moment, and then you feel prepared. You don't feel nervous anymore.
That's awesome. I mean, you said preparation a lot. I remember one of the most phenomenal bassists that I've ever met, who's also a good friend, Will Burkhead, said the 5 Ps. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. And being the playback engineer, it sounds like you have a lot of those that, really is key to you succeeding. Let's get technical a little bit. For those who don't know, you mentioned earlier that the playback engineer is in charge of the pyro, the video, the lighting, all that kind of stuff. What do you mean by that? And because when I think playback engineers, I just see little computers and maybe they have a little play button, a big play button or a set list. How is the playback engineer in charge of all that? You mean like when we go to a big concert and we see all these things, there's not somebody like hitting, red or blue or white, or like, how does it work?
Great question. So I wouldn't say that I'm in charge of any of those departments. They have a wonderful set of engineers and designers that are designing the show side of that. But when it comes to the operation of it, a lot of it is controlled by something called timecode. Timecode is an audio strip that talks to a lot of the digital run equipment in a way that they can sequence motion or any sort of command that you would, as an engineer, be pressing a button for. You can program that in correlation with this timecode strip that would then automate your functions to wherever that timecode strip is. So if it's reading, 1 hour, 20 minutes, and 30 frames, whatever, you have this perfect cue on that mark that is going to happen right when it reads that strip of audio. And every department has that. And that's how you get the video to sync perfectly with the click track and the band on stage. That's how you get the cryo smoke to pop right on the hit with the band. On the same kind of thing, but not using timecode, just within the DAW or I'm using Ableton. So I'm sending things called program changes to each of the band members. So in a pop setting, each of those things that you hear on the album usually aren't a rock band sound. You're hearing really specific drum tones, and you're hearing really specific synth bass tones or guitar tones, and all of those things are specific to the sonic identity of that artist. You can't just play rock band tones over their album and it was going to feel like them. So what you're doing is you're layering a lot of these tones onto, in drum world, it'll be a lot of SPDS or drum triggers, layering those sounds on top of the acoustic drum so that when he hits the snare, it doesn't sound like a snare. It actually sounds like a hand clap. All of those things happen in sequence with my Ableton session, meaning that I have, on the tech side, I have these software drum racks in Ableton that change on every section of the song depending on what he needs. So he's playing it live, but I'm changing the sound. Same thing with the guitar player, changing his patches, changing bass world where it's, you have the Moog and then you have the bass that we're running through a Helix on this one. So I then need to know, I need to know Helix, I need to know Fractal, I need to know Roland SPDS and each of those ecosystems so that I can make sure that everything's talking in coordination with any backline tech or whatever. So all of that is running into my computers.
Wow.
So that when I press play, all of these automation streams are happening via timecode or via MIDI. RTP MIDI is how you get all of those long signals sent to the band, so that you have what's called a connected stage.
Wow.
Everything's talking. Everything's on a local network. And that can get even more in depth when you start getting into Dante and Maddie and how each of those optical connections work, or if you have an Ethernet Cat 6 connection or whatever. There's a lot of different ways.
You speak in my world.
Yeah. So that's kind of the role of the playback engineer. Is it's a lot of upfront prep. You're prepping a session. In rehearsals, I'm going through every bar and I'm talking nudging things ever so slightly so that when the guitar player plays that first note of whatever, it's the right tone at the right time. And I'm talking like you're nudging things so minimally, and really refining things so that when that performer is on stage, they're giving their best and they're not thinking a thing about their patches. They don't have a pedal board on stage. They're just performing.
Wow.
Fully present in the moment, which is what you want for all of your performers, is to just not have to think about it.
Wow. Which sounds exactly like what you've been doing for the last 10 years at church.
Yeah.
Patches, Helix, Fractal, Nords. time code sending out. I mean, all these things that now I get why you're not nervous, because these are things that you've been doing and refining over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Now you take it into the big leagues, and, these performers play in front of 20, 50,000 people. And because of your preparation, hopefully most of the night goes off without a hitch.
Right.
For those who are thinking about getting into playback in the pros, we love all you playback engineers for churches. It's amazing. We've all done it. We still do it every now and then. What are some quick tips that can help them to get to your level or to pro level playback engineering?
First, do your homework. Know your gear. Know the DAW. Know your template. Know hardline connections and software things. Know the gear that you're using. You never want to run into a situation that you have to troubleshoot and you don't know the workaround. You're being hired to be the guy who knows the workaround to make sure that that system works. So do your homework. Read the user manual. That's a big one.
So Eric, as the playback engineer for Big Time Rush, what playback gear do you use?
Currently, we're using iConnectivity, Play Audio, the 1U, as well in aggregate with Play Audio 12, so that we get the amount of channels that we need. We also run a UAD interface for vocal processing. We are using iConnectivity Mio XMs around the stage for a connected stage through sending RTP MIDI signals to the band so that they have their patch changes. And then, I'm running Ableton 12 currently on a couple of Silicone M2 Apple laptops.
How many outputs are you sending to Audio World from playback?
I think currently we're at 20 outputs of audio. So we have, we have 4 principal vocalists. And then in addition to that, we have a lot of different track sends in stereo. And then we're also sending a lot of what we call slate or cues. So those are things in the ears, like the click track is probably what most people are comfortable with hearing in their in-ears, but also little guide cues or pitch references for the artist so that they know exactly what that first note needs to be, especially if there's no pitch reference leading up to that moment, or choreo cues. So if there's a certain spike mark or a certain move, if they're dancing, it's helpful to have that guide, and it just goes to that one person's ears that needs it.
Eric, as the playback engineer for Big Time Rush's IRL tour, how many inputs are there in a show of this magnitude?
Inputs, gosh, I don't know. Honestly, that's a question for the
close to 100. You think?
Dude, I would have to pull up the input list. It's healthy. I'll say that it is very healthy.
From you alone, you're sending close to 20. So
I'm sending 20. Drum World has probably upwards of 12 mics, and then in addition to that, they also have gate triggers on every drum.
So it doubles automatically.
Yeah. Guitar World, it's only a couple. Bass World, there's a Helix and a Moog. So you got I don't know. Depends on and a wet and a dry. So, so not a lot in terms of like the instruments, but with the vocals and processing, we have wet and dry for vocals as well, which can help that tally up. But it's a lot of inputs. It's a long sheet.
Let's give another tip to the up and coming playback engineer.
Communicate. There are a lot of things that set the tone for the show. One of them is your voice. When you're communicating on mic, you are the only person in the artist's ears.
Wow.
So things could be falling apart around you. You could be hearing other frantic people in your ears that maybe the artist can't hear, but my tone matters. I need to be light. I need to be professional, and I need to make sure that the artist is always confident and relaxed when we're about to do a show or in the middle of a show, because a lot can go wrong. And it's external things. Someone faints in the audience, and you want to be present for medical staff, or maybe there was a hiccup in the PA during changeover, and the show was supposed to start, and I press play, nothing's coming out of the PA, so I get a really frantic systems tech saying, we need to start over, and I can't reflect his anxiety.
Right.
So I'm going to stop the show in as musical and responsible way as I can, and we're going to start over. But my communication to the band and to the performers that are hopping on stage needs to be calm, professional, and collected. Communication to your MD. Every camp has a really different feel. Some MDs are really hands-on. Some are really leaning on you to make sure that playback is what it needs to be. No matter the case, you have to be really communicative so that if something changes, you're always on the same page. You don't ever want there to be something that, like the right hand not knowing what the left hand's doing, essentially. So always being over communicative if something needs a change, if there's a hiccup, if there's an issue, so that you're always coordinating together. And then like not taking everything too seriously. I like to always gauge the artist, but with the guys in Big Time Rush, like we've toured together now for over 3 years. So I have some rapport with the guys where like they'll joke with me and I'm not ever going to say anything, that would be setting anybody off their game, but I'll keep it light. I'll keep it fun. I don't ever want to talk their ear off, at all. I want to be respectful of the flow of show, but if I can, keep things light, I'll do that. I'll take advantage of just that relational equity with the guys to make sure that everybody's having a good time.
That's awesome. I bumped into Eric at NAMM last week, and I got so lucky because he's actually in town right now just for a little bit before he goes back out on tour. I believe this tour, the IRL tour of Big Time Rush, you guys are hitting almost 70 dates throughout these last couple of years, are heading into the summer season as well. You're now going to go into, I think, Europe or South America, but you also have a family and a wonderful kid, Luddy.
Yeah.
How do you balance this? How do you make sure that your family's taken care of at the same time you're really taking care of the artists and making sure that they feel good night in and night out? And the schedule can be grueling. How does this all work?
A rock star of a wife. She is incredible. First off, I mean,
shout out to Lauren.
Yeah, I mean, nothing would flow without her. It starts there. She has to feel supported. When I'm on the road a lot, I want to make sure that she's in an area that she has community, that she has support, especially solo parenting for extended periods of time is no joke. There's so many little details that go into that can wear on you day in and day out. Early mornings, never getting to sleep in because he's going to wake up at 7 a.m. So it starts with her and making sure that she's set up for a win.
Right support system.
Yeah. And just over communicating again, a lot of those same skill sets. And I can't say that I have figured out the communication piece. I'll be the first to admit that like that was something I really had to grow in, and I'm still continuing to try to grow in. That's like a real honest take right there, is like I need to be a better communicator, and that's all around, so always improving in that area. But then when you're home, you have to be so present. I don't really over busy myself when I'm home. I want to be as helpful to her as I can be in the few weeks that I'm home. So I'm going to wake up with a kid every day. I'm going to make sure that, her coffee gets made and that I'm taking him to school, and I'm present, take the load off her. It actually kind of, now that I'm thinking about it, reminds me of when she was pregnant. There's so many extra responsibilities that you can take on to support her, so that, because she's already doing so much heavy lifting, that you can take that load and support her. So to me, it reminds me of that, and doing all the little things, do the load of laundry, empty the dishwasher, make sure the car's clean, whatever it is, whatever little chore that maybe is just that extra thing that she has to do, take it off her plate.
Mm-hmm.
And that really has helped us when we're home to make sure that we're in a good spot, that there's never any resentment for not being home, and you make up for it. And man, spend time with your kids. It's hard when you're gone. It's really hard when you're gone. You miss them a lot. Thank God for FaceTime.
Nah, I was about to say nightly FaceTimes in the bunk.
Oh yeah. Thank God for FaceTime. But yeah, try and be present.
Well, Eric, you're a wonderful human being, and I know because I've known you for over 15 years now. I'm so excited for this chapter in your life, being a husband, being a dad, but then also getting to travel the world. I know this is something that we were talking about even back when we were roommates, and to see you now out there in the world doing this, make me proud, my bro. You make me proud. So, thank you so much for making time. You're about to leave in less than 2 weeks here.
Yeah.
So you guys make sure you follow him. We'll put all his socials down here. Eric's about to go hit the road for another 6 weeks, I think, on this run.
Yeah.
Another 6 weeks out with Big Time Rush on their IRL tour. Eric, thank you so much for coming on the Chad&Chong podcast. Next time, Chong, you better show up. But please like, subscribe, rate us 5 stars if you like this. Share this with all your friends, and we'll catch you on the next one.